Hi, my name's Phil. I talking about politics, and there are just under 6 million small businesses in the UK. And even if they were all like one person operations, that would still be about 6 million people affected by this. But they're not, of course. A small business is defined as having up to 49 employees. I don't know what the average is. Even if you take it to be about 2, you're still talking about 12 million people. So we're talking about a good chunk of workers in the UK who should be interested if anything that affects small businesses, like, oh, I don't know, Brexit were to happen. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So yeah, if we think about the way various businesses have reacted to Brexit trade barriers, it's been a tale of two cities really, because we've had some very large businesses explaining the impact that they've faced, like Marks and Spencer's not being able to sell sandwiches in Paris, for example, or Sainsbury's having to put Spartans on their shelves in Northern Ireland. There's of course been, there's been food shortages throughout the UK. Northern Ireland has borne the brunt of that. But then we've had the small businesses who've talked about an existential threat. The large businesses are really talking about what can they do. The small businesses are talking about, can we do anything at all? Small businesses hit by Brexit are not only less able to navigate through the new bureaucratic quagmire, but they're more likely to fail completely if they can't. Because with some businesses, it's not a case of, oh, we may have to downsize. With some businesses, they can't. Again, if you've got 1 or 2 people in the business, you can't downsize very much before there is no business. A large business, as I say, could potentially scale back. A small business can fold completely. A small business is also much less able to weather a storm. So if there's another business that, for example, think that the main problems can be solved with, for example, the health certificates coming online in the spring, or improvements in customs procedures, the next question is, can the business actually survive long enough to see it out? Can they carry on with their operations, even though some parts of the business will be operating at a loss, rather than get rid of it altogether, because in 6 months' time they'll be able to start making headway? Can they afford much lower levels of trade, maybe even none at all, thinking of shellfish exporters here in particular, for say 4 to 6 months? Again, for a small business, the answer is more likely, not certain, but more likely to be no. And it won't help if the government try to tackle the problem in the same way as they did for firms hit by COVID, for example. Because a small business won't want to tide themselves over with a loan if they can't guarantee that they'll be back up to trading at full capacity within a specified time frame. It's too big a risk. Because imagine you were a business that took one of these loans last year for COVID. And this is why a lot of businesses didn't take these loans, and it was for this reason. But let's say you're a business who took one of those loans. Give the example of what can go wrong. And you believed the government that it would all be over by Christmas. So you just had to get yourself through this year. 2021, you'd be all right again, particularly if you didn't think Brexit would hit you. What must they be thinking now? We're now looking at a situation where the economic depression as a result of just COVID, never mind Brexit, could go on for some time. Another year at least, possibly 2. So they could still go under, but they got that loan, so they've got an extra heap of debt piled onto them for good measure. And I was reading an article that explained that, so what's happening right now is that these smaller businesses are having to decide for themselves whether or not they can keep trading with the EU realistically. If the answer is no, then they either have to shut down the part of the business that deals with EU customers, or they have to move it to an EU country. Either way, of course, it's jobs lost in the UK, or at least Britain. Now, to explain the issue, beyond just the extra time for shipping, there's an additional cost for that shipping. There's a surcharge for all shipping into the EU to take account of the delays at the border. There's the costs associated with the paperwork. If the item you're exporting can't be proven to originate in the UK, and we do quite a bit of trade where this isn't the case, then there's import duties to factor in as well. Because the idea of tariff-free trade is not quite what some people think it is. For example, so if you're a company who produces goods in the UK, you do manufacture goods in the UK, but a significant proportion of your raw materials or components come from outside of the UK, then there's tariffs. You're not going to pay the tariffs, but your customers on the other side are going to pay tariffs in the EU. That puts up the effective price of your goods. Another example, of course, is simply buying goods made outside the UK. Plenty of clothes companies, for example, clothes are manufactured in parts of the world where labour is a lot cheaper. So, they import them into the UK to their warehouses, then export them to customers around Europe. They obviously have also going to have tariffs on them as well. And these are not niche examples. They're actually quite common. Our businesses import a lot. We're a big importer, both raw materials and components, as well as manufactured products, the finished products. So small and medium-sized businesses who are basically shops, they get their products in and sell them on, are having to factor in import tariffs on their goods for EU customers. So we don't really have, tariff-free trade as such. So for all the governments boasting about this being a free trade agreement, which, from a certain point of view it is, there are actually tariffs on a hell of a lot of our exports to the EU. And all of this makes for our businesses becoming much less competitive, because when faced with extra costs, you've got two choices. One, you absorb those costs. That eats into your profits, of course. But these costs are so large that you wouldn't have to be, you'd be taking such a massive hit to your profits. It's hard to imagine that if your profit margin was large enough to absorb these and you still carry on as a business, it's hard to imagine that other businesses wouldn't have sprung up to undercut you, because it sounds like you're making a lot off this. So I can't imagine that the profit margins are actually large enough to cope with all these extra costs. I certainly haven't seen an example of one where they can manage. So two, your other option is you put your prices up. But this now means that your products are much more expensive than your EU competitors at least. And of the 6 million businesses, over a quarter of them trade directly with the EU. Many others, of course, would be part of a supply chain that crosses the borders and affects them as well. But over 1.5 million British businesses now has to deal with costly paperwork, fees, delays in shipping, potentially tariffs that didn't exist a few weeks ago. So you're getting to the point where for some of these businesses, even small businesses, it could actually be cheaper to set up operations in the EU with all the extra costs and hassle associated with that than to deal with the crippling tax and paperwork charges. Another example, of course, of Brexit delivering the opposite of what the cultists expected, because instead of generating more jobs, it is reducing them. It's generating jobs in the EU, of course. And that's just for goods. For services, it's even worse, because we still don't know what's going to be agreed between the UK and the EU. That hasn't been decided yet, because it wasn't part of the deal. And whatever is agreed, by the way, is not going to take the form of a formal treaty. It'll be basically a gentleman's agreement. The UK is going to announce what its intentions are with regard service industries. The EU will make its decision based on that. If the UK changes, and absolutely it has the sovereign right to change, then the EU will go, we'll rescind this then. So it can be removed at any time. At this point, you'll see the usual suspects then trying to bang on about, the long-term of benefits of a possible US trade deal. Short-term pain for long-term gain, they'll say. We'll just replace that trade with the US. They've been trying this one for a few years. Here's the thing. So the EU is protectionist. A lot of these trade barriers, particularly in services, are going to be as a result of the fact that the EU has gone, right, you don't want to be part of our club, that's fine, you don't get to enjoy the benefits of membership. But the United States is very protectionist too. Arguably more so. Any deal we get will reflect this. And that deal, if and when it appears, will exist to give the United States greater access to the British market. It will not give a great deal more access for our businesses in their market. They also, just like we do, have inefficient but wealthy businesses that will need looking after by the US government. And the US government will look after them. And they won't achieve that by giving businesses in a foreign country an equal footing on their own land. So there's no way of just abandoning a load of EU trade and maintaining a certain level of British business. Yet there also doesn't seem to be a way to maintain the current levels of competitiveness either. That doesn't seem to be possible within Brexit, because if your business remains in the UK, then you have to deal with the transport costs, possibly tariffs, certainly expensive paperwork, VAT issues, shipping delays. If you want to set up a base of operations in the EU, then you've got extra rental costs, staffing costs, as well as having to manage at least 2 systems of employment and other laws as well. And again, bear in mind the vast majority of businesses in the UK are small businesses. We've got about 6 million businesses in the UK, and about 5.9 million of them are small businesses. This has the potential to be carnage if the government doesn't take the issue seriously, but unfortunately, we also seem to have voted for a government that spends its time actively trying to avoid taking blame rather than preventing the thing happening that means that they are to blame. They're not problem solvers, they are PR charlatans, which is why they've been quietly advising British businesses to set up in the EU, as I was talking about earlier this week. But there we are, fun times. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.